nice. Good evening. Welcome to July, all the heat out there. Tonight we're going to have someone cool us down with some really cool turning stuff. Jon Lindgren, been a member of our club forever?
Probably 18, 20 years.
Yeah, forever. Longer than I have. So we're going to let Jon take it over and show us how to turn spheres and hold them. Jon Lindgren.
I'll take a shot at it. It's going to be kind of a loose little demonstration because I do the final sphere turning with a ball jig, which won't fit this lathe. So I'll go through the whole process of how I turn the balls, how I finish the balls, and that sort of thing. It's kind of a strange position to be in. You know, you guys know who Dan Wiener is. He became famous for something. I'm not famous for that, but I am famous for my spheres. I'm sorry, I thought that was funnier than you did. I'm going to kind of go through the process here. Pardon? Anthony, that's why nobody can't laugh. Well, maybe it was just because it wasn't funny. Well, I'm going to kind of go through the process here. The first thing is blank preparation. What I do is I make a blank and I do the usual thing. I make it round. And then I put a tenon on each end so that I can chuck it up and hold both ends up. Because in the end, what I'm going to do is part this apart and then turn the inside of the ball first. And then I'll put it back together and turn the ball around the hole. I've kind of jokingly said that at show and tell a few times, and everybody goes, eh? But that is exactly what I do, is I create the hole in the center of the ball first. So to show you where we're going, I had some cedar laying around my shop from when we did a deck cover, and so I took some pieces of it, and just to show you what I did, this would be the blank, then I parted it, then I turned the inside out, and this is where you start getting, where you want to be somewhat precise in turning the inside out so that you have a nice round hemisphere in there that will match the curvature of the outside of the ball, which will be the diameter of the cylinder that you originally turned. And to do that, I make a template, and I had one around here someplace, but I make it out of any one of a number of things. Be a coffee can lid, cottage cheese lid, anything. But what I do is I chuck that up against one half, cut it just slightly smaller than the diameter of the cylinder, and then when you fold that in half, what you have is the template for the hemisphere that you're going to turn into each half of the cylinder. So if you care to take a look, you could pass these around and see where we get started on the thing. And then after that, you get the thing mounted on the lathe, and you can either continue to mount it with the chucks, or, oh, there it is, or you can turn it between centers. And when you start using your ball jig, the critical part is that you have it equal distance, the cut equal distance from the center line on the ball. I don't know whether you can see it on camera, but there's a glue joint right here in the center. And yeah, and then you need to make sure that the distance from this cut line to the center is equal to this cut line to the center. And if you do that, you'll end up turning a ball around that hole that you just made. And if anybody cares to look, you can pass that around too. It's not very much for show and tell, but kind of shows what I'm doing. And then you take the ball jig and you turn a ball. Yes? I've got a Leslie. If I were getting one today, that wouldn't be what I'd get. I'd probably look at the Carter. They're got some nice adjustment on it for cranking in your cutter bar, which makes it a little more user-friendly. Put it over there. This is the one that I use, and it's a good ball jig, but the control on it is simply manual. You slide the bar in and out manually. Where the Carter, for example, has a screw on the back you turn. And you can also turn the bar, the cutter bar on the cutter, so that you can cut at an angle, which theoretically I think would give you a smoother cut. This one works. The other thing that's probably wrong with this, don't tell the manufacturer, but this won't stay tight, so when I'm doing it, I have to hold this as I go back and forth. But you get used to it. You're welcome to look at that. I won't pass it around, but you're welcome to look at that later. All right, go back to the ball jig. You put that up there, and you very carefully turn your ball around the hole you made. But something happened here. It got just a little wonky on me. It wasn't quite centered. I was turning it between centers, and it was just a little bit off center. And what this does prove is you can't turn cedar down to 1/32 and then sand it, because when I started sanding it, pretty soon this black spot started coming around at me. But that's the end result of the process that I'm just talking about before you get to the part that's fun, the decorating. If you break that, I won't be real disappointed. So now back to the mechanics of the whole thing. Hardwood clearly is much better than cedar or pine or any other softwoods for the same reasons you all know with your regular turnings. This is a piece of Bradford pear that I miss from my own yard. And I've already started on it, and I've turned the hollow in this half already, and another one of the templates. But I'll show you how I make that. And to double chuck it, I've simply got a gadget that mounts on the live center. I'll get this out of the way so I can work on the other half. And we'll bring the coffee can lid back up. This is kind of a basic thing, but it's really how you determine the thickness of the outside walls of your ball. Oh, this way. Okay. Wrong. A little different in a power matic. I go the wrong way. This is one excellent use for a skew. Get a little more traction here. And that's a tough coffee can lid. There we go. Now I still got it a little bigger than I want it for the actual hollow part of the ball. Okay, now I don't know whether you can see that or not on camera, but what I've got is probably 1/8 of an inch wall thickness there. So that's the interesting part of my demonstration. Now, just like I did for the other half of the ball, and I would normally just make one, but I wanted you to enjoy the experience of seeing me make one. And sure enough, they're the same size. That's good. But I'll use the one that I used for the other half of the ball, so I make sure that I've got a match. Is this yours, Ken? No. Could. I've done some cartooning. I try to get it down to between 1/8 and 1/16. That 1/32 on that cedar ball I'm passing around is entirely too thin. And I do that with some very sophisticated tools called scrapers. I use this first to establish the wall thickness, and I've just got a square scraper here, and this one's getting wonky on me already, too. See what I got here. That's going to be close enough. Pardon? I'm just trying to establish the wall thickness. So I want a nice edge there that I can lay this in to see if I'm there yet. I'm still a little thick, as a matter of fact. But I'll soon hang that square scraper up and still a little, that'll be all right. A little more. Right. Right. And so far, they've held up. So that's probably what I'll continue to do. Now, the next thing is you want to hog as much wood out as you can. I find I'm more successful in doing it without screwing it up using a scraper. Because unlike a regular bowl where you're turning the outside of the bowl first, here you're turning the inside, and you have to be pretty precise about getting it to a nice round arc And also, you don't want to go too deep. If you do go too deep, not a big problem, because you can always take some edge off here and lower it down. But I generally use a little high. Nice noise. Good demonstrator could talk while he was doing this. Let's see what I got. Not even close. Got about a good 5/8 of an inch to go. Whoops. Okay, let's see what we got. Ooh, still about a quarter. Getting close. And at some point you got to start measuring the sides. So I've got some high points like right in there. not very exciting, but it's got to be done. Well, I'm going to go with close enough for right now. The important thing here is that I've got it round. If it's a little heavy on one end, I can always tell which is the bottom. And then the next step would be simply to glue this back together again. And I'll do that, I'll put a clamp around it, I'll let it sit generally overnight so I've got a good set on it. And then the next thing to do is to turn a ball around the hole. And yeah, like so. I just use the tight bond. Just tight bond. Tight bond, whatever, original, yeah. No. You've got to have the center of the jig right here, and I can't put my center there. I know that the one that, I'm trying to think of who's selling it. No, it's somebody else, but they're selling it, and they show you turning the inside, not necessarily of the ball, but even if you do it with that one, you can't get your center pivot point in line with the front of your ball. So, I think you could go a long ways with it, but I don't think you could finish it if you want the ends to be the same thickness as the sides. So the next step then would be that I would mount up my ball jig and start working on turning the outside of the ball in, and it's nibbling it off a little bit at a time. The main thing you got to do is make sure that as you move on that one ball that I passed around that has the A and B red line on it, that you get the distance of your cut equal distance from the seam on your ball. Otherwise, of course, you'll go through one end or the other, like on that ball that I passed around. With that one, it pretty much got wonky. So that's kind of where I'm going to leave you with actually turning the ball. The next part is after you've turned the ball, then it's up to your own imagination as to what you do with it. This is one of the first ones I did. This one happens to be mesquite. And I turned it, pierced it, put a few dragonflies on it. You want to send that around, welcome to pass it around. It doesn't bounce, so don't bounce it. Here's another one that I did recently with a lot more cutouts on it. And I basically, I put the flowers on it. Most of that is freehand. And then I did the piercing afterwards, did a little coloring on it. Yes. she's asking if it makes a difference whether you do bigger balls or smaller balls. I really don't think it makes much difference. It's just whatever size ball you're comfortable turning. You know, if this is a nice, comfortable size for you, do it. I think that smaller ones are probably more difficult to do than larger ones. Right. Yeah. This is one of the more recent ones that I did, and for all of you that are going to SWAT, I've been invited to put something in the 2-for-1 raffle this year, so this piece will probably be going in the 2-for-1, unless I come up with some reason that my wife wants to keep it. I've got a, I can't remember the name of it, but I've got a pneumatic tool that I use for that. And depending on, you know, how delicate I'll get, I maybe put in some of the larger holes with something a little faster than that. I've also got a Fordham, so, you know, some of it with that. Here's one that I had down at SWAT last year. Has a base under it, so you can pretend it's a tree. You want to pass that around if anybody cares to look at it. Yeah, I do that. That is all burned. There it went. I'll give you that. Yeah. This is one I did a while back. I was just kind of fooling around with doing some texturing on it, and I used an acrylic media to put the little spines on it, which kind of made an interesting ball out of it, and painted it with some metallic paints. And here's one that I did. This one is just done out of pine, piece of pine I had, and then since it had such a rough finish, because you get a lot of tear out on it, just like you do on this kind of stuff. So I used an acrylic media to fill it in and kind of make it semi-smooth. And then to paint this, I just put a drop of paint on it and blew it around with an airbrush. With no paint in the airbrush, just blew it around with the air. And that's where all that weird looking stuff that's on it came from. Then I did a little airbrushing afterwards to kind of fill in the gaps. So that's kind of the secrets. To transfer designs on, I've used a couple methods. One is I just use graphite paper and steal some designs off the internet, trace them onto the ball. That's what I did with the one with the butterflies that's coming around. Traced them on, and then I airbrushed those butterflies to put the color on after I'd burned the design in. There's also some stuff that's available that is you can run it through your bubble jet printer and print out any design you want. But I'll pass a sample of that around. It's a little bit hard to work with. It's double-sided, so one side is adhesive, so once you pull it apart, you can stick your design on the ball, and it's burn paper. So if you use your burning tool, it just burns right through it, and it more or less disappears.
Where did you get that?
I got this from a gourd company out in California that sells it to their gourd designers. I can't think of the name. Wellburn is the name of it. but it comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets. I use a combination of paint and piercing to do some of these. This is one of the earlier ones that I did that is kind of a droopy sunflower, if you will, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And that's kind of the extent of what I have to show you, since I can't put my ball jig on and actually turn the outside of this ball. Pardon? Yeah. Did you get it? Did it come that way? Here's a couple of my first attempts that are not hollow. But these are all freehand. They're a little weird, but I had fun doing them. In terms of the decorating on it, I use airbrush, I use Pentel pens. I've used some acrylic, like on the one that you're looking at there, to put some texturing on it. Yes. He wants to know what I do to hide the center seam. I do my best to hide the center seam. And the reaction is before people tumble to the fact that it's two pieces is, how did you do that? And so I usually will put the design around over the center seam. And if you notice on the ones I've passed around, you may or may not be able to find it. I know where it is, so I probably can. But that's about the extent of what I do. The other thing is that you got to be real careful with this edge. And a lot of times I'll take a sanding stick and give it a shot so that it'll match up with the other side as flawlessly as I can do. Yes? Yes. I do. I initially glue them in the lathe, and I'll put a band around them in the lathe to get them matched up. And I also try to be careful so that the grain alignment matches up as well. Well, his question is, how do I match the outside curvature to the inside curvature? Basically, you've determined that when you've made your cylinder that you're going to turn into a ball. And so you hollow out, however brave you are. If you want to take it down to 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch on the wall thickness here. Can you still hear me? Sounds like I dropped out. And once you've done that, you use this outside diameter, and with the ball jig, you center it right under your ball. And so when you're working back and forth, nibbling off the outside till you end up with a round ball, you're doing it centered on the middle of that ball, which should have equal amounts hollowed out on each end, if you're lucky. Yeah. So a lot of it is making sure this is centered. And I'll get it on there, I'll start it, I'll measure it, I'll move it, I'll measure it, I'll move it again if I need to get it perfectly centered so that I'm doing a circle right from that joint line. There's a couple of ways you can get rid of the tenon. I've started not doing this. I was just turning it between centers after I took it out of the chucks. But now what I do is I leave one end chucked up so that I can turn that end all the way in with the ball, or with the ball jig, and that'll leave me having to deal with this end. And I will eyeball this end down as far as I dare go, and then you can take it and mount it between cup centers like this, and true up that one center that is longer, but have it spinning this way. Hope you don't go too far. You know, I surprisingly have ruined very few of them. I don't know why. Probably because it takes me forever. But this particular one was a little wonky, and I didn't bother to come back and try to center it up. And when I got done, I had clearly gone to it was coming this way at me, and I got it so thin that when I was sanding it, all of a sudden I was sanding a hole. Yeah, Doc.
Tell me, it may sound like a dumb question, but that's
That's right. I'll have a dumb answer. So.
Why do you use scraper to hollow that whole thing instead of using a gouge, nice clean cut, and smooth it out with a scraper?
You could do it either way. Sometimes I do use a gouge. I find out that I'm less likely to screw it up in front of an audience if I'm using a scraper.
Dumb question.
No. No, I didn't. The question was, did I make my own cup centers? And I thought I brought some. Oh, here they are. I do have cup centers that I do use that I made. I just put a thread in it, so it'll mount on there, and this, of course, mounts on the headstock. And sometimes I'll pad these with something to keep from leaving lines on it, because invariably you're going to get it spinning in there. I sand it on the lathe for the most part. Yeah. And I've got a dust collector going and a mask on, just so you guys know I'm trying to be safe. Yes? He asked about RPMs, and you know, it's one of those things I kind of do what I'm comfortable with. I like to go as fast as I'm comfortable with, because you just cut faster, get done sooner, and a lot of times you'll get a smoother cut going at a little higher RPM than you will going slow. That was my pocket. Any other questions? So you'll all be bringing in a hollow sphere next month? Maybe not. Well, I've got one more thing. Everybody gets into turning for various reasons. When I was a kid, my grandfather worked as a maintenance guy, carpenter, furniture repairman for Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois. He probably didn't make a lot of money doing that, but occasionally for Christmas we would get gifts that he made in his wood shop there at the college. And we still have a few in the family of the turnings that he made. And this is one that he made that he gave to us probably 65 years ago. I'm 75, and I'm sure it was no more than 10 when we gave that. You can see a few tool marks in it. The base broke off of it, and in a series of moves over the years, it got lost. And a few weeks ago, I knocked out another base to put on it, so I could put it out. And it's made out of pine, and it's got some tool marks in it. I thought about taking the tool marks out, but then I decided I'd leave his tool marks in it. So that's kind of what got me interested in wood turning. So if you care to look at that up close, I'd be glad to pass it around. Don't drop it. I'd rather you drop from the vault. Yeah, you want to look at it? Yeah, come on up and look at it. Is that my wife calling? Oh. Unless there's more questions.